What's up folks, Nate here at Two Wheel Dyno Works, and today I'm back on our dyno with our 2025 Kawasaki Z900. And today we're doing some more exhaust testing for you folks with the full system from CS Racing. Now, we actually already had mapping built for this particular system from the prior generation Z900s. We knew exactly what the fueling needs are, say, compared to like a full M4 or full Acura with this pipe. So we were able to quickly apply those changes to the new generation 2025 Z900s with that information and knowing what the fueling needs of those systems are already on these bikes. But so many people have asked me to go ahead and show you guys this system on our dyno, on our new 25 Z900, that I finally caved and just ordered one, and now you're getting this video. And we've actually flashed a couple hundred Z900s over the years for this particular system. This CS Racing full system is incredibly popular on these bikes, and it does flow massively better than the stock system ever can. Now, before we dive into the specific output of the CS Racing system on this bike, let's quickly just recap here how these bikes perform in bone stock configuration, and then bone stock with our tuning in place, and then we can talk about this full system and see what gains you're really getting from it. So bone stock on our dyno, you can see there the red line. The bike makes 114 horsepower and about 68 pound-feet of torque to the tire on pump gas. But above about 8,000 RPMs, the power curve really starts to kind of go to hell, and then it just falls off a cliff entirely when the stock throttle-by-wire restrictions kick in at the very top end around 10,300 RPM, and the power just completely falls on its face. The blue line is the exact same bike, again, our bike here, bone stock, but with our tuning in place. Power picks up dramatically, you're at almost 117 horsepower and about 71 pound-feet of torque, and you gain a massive, almost 30 frickin' horsepower out there at the top end of the rev range. Now, as we covered in our initial stock exhaust testing and tuning video, the stock exhaust system on these bikes, especially the Euro 5 compliant models, suck. They do not flow well, they leave a lot of performance on the table. So now, knowing what the stock system will flow and do, let's take a look at the performance of this pipe from CS Racing with our custom ECU mapping in place to match the specific airflow characteristics of this system. The green line there is our bike on the dyno right now as it sits with the CS Racing system installed and our tuning in place. You pick up power and torque literally everywhere, folks. You're about 123.5, almost 124 horse to the tire on pump gas and a little over 73 pound-feet of torque. And the gains are literally everywhere throughout the entirety of the rev range. So compared to stock, this system is fantastic. With proper tuning in place, you're gaining 7 horsepower for the stock exhaust system and about 3 pound-feet of torque throughout pretty much the entirety of the rev range. Now, when it comes to comparing this system to others out there on the market, it is pretty darn close in terms of outright performance, but it simply is not capable of flowing quite the same amount of air, and therefore quite the same amount of power, that some of the other more traditionally designed systems, like the Acura or the M4 that we've already shown you, are capable of flowing. Now, there's two primary reasons for this on this exhaust system. The first one's very obvious. Visually, this is a very short belly exit exhaust system with a pretty aggressive bend here that has to turn almost 90 degrees to get to this outlet just behind the foot peg. Whereas with something like the Acura or the M4, that system is a much more gradual bend that comes up to about here, and then you have just a straight shot for an outlet. That lesser bend angle and the longer exhaust system do aid themselves in providing a bit more performance than something like this is ever simply going to be able to flow. You make more exhaust pulse velocity, the less bends you've got to put in one of these systems. So with a bend like this, where it is, again, a very sharp bend, right there at that angle, and not having quite as much pipe length, it will just be a little bit lesser of a performer than other systems of the aforementioned design. Now, the second significant difference between this system and the others that perform slightly better is a little bit more subtle, but it actually becomes pretty obvious if you hold up the headers side by side. So what I've got here laying next to the bike on our dyno is the full Acura system for this bike. If you take a look at the headers here and notice how much further down on this system that the collectors actually all merge together off of the head pipe, and then take a look at where they merge on the CS Racing system, you will see that they actually start much sooner here into the bend angle. The Acura does not start to merge until about down here, whereas these, again, have a kind of a sharper angle here and are merging much sooner. And if you look at the actual, what I'm going to call the dual portion of the collector itself, you can see that these pipes are a much more straightforward and uniform design, whereas these are not. The number 1 and number 2 cylinder are getting quite a different bend angle than number 3 and 4, and where they merge from each 4 joint into 2, so right here, there is quite a bit of a difference in how clean that bend and that merge is between the two pipes. So for both the obvious reason, which is just the sheer exhaust length difference between something like the CS Racing System versus the Acura or the M4, and the pretty noticeable header design difference where the M4 and the Acura are simply just a cleaner, more straight through and properly flowing setup than the CS Racing System, they simply don't quite compare to one another. But seeing how different they are, I've always been a little impressed with the CS Racing System's outright performance because it's not that much worse than a full-length system with a proper header, like the Acura or the M4. On our dyno with perfect tuning in place for either design, this is how they stack up. The blue line there is the CS Racing System as it sits right now on our bike. The red line is the M4, or the Acura. Again, they're pretty much identical. They perform within tenths of one another. At peak, you're talking about a barely more than 2 horsepower difference. Right about there, it's almost 3 horsepower, and then you're talking about less than 2 pound-feet of torque differences no matter where you look in the rev range. Throughout most of it, it's actually like 1 pound-foot of torque. So the CS Racing System, for those of you that want that sort of short, low mount, or belly exit system, it still flows shockingly well compared to the full-length or high-mount traditional 421 header designs. And no matter what way you look at it, if I introduce the green line there, which is how the bike flows with the stock exhaust system in place and our tuning to match, it's still much better than that, no matter what setup you go with. It's also worth noting that these low-mount systems, like the CS Racing, put the sound below you. And that does make them sound sort of objectively louder while you're riding the bike, because instead of having the muffler back here and shooting the sound behind you, it is going right beneath your butt. So they do sound a little bit more, I don't want to say obnoxious, but they are louder. They do drone a little bit more when you're riding on the road, but a lot of people love these systems, which is why we flashed hundreds of the prior generation and several of the current generation for them. And my personal opinion doesn't matter. Our job here at Two Wheel Dyno Works is to build the highest quality intake and exhaust specific custom ECU mapping that we can for you folks and the systems that you're going to want to put on your bike. And to that end, we've got that mission accomplished. No matter what intake or exhaust setup you decide to put on your new 25 Z900, we've got you covered. There is not an exhaust system left out here that we have not already built mapping for, seen, and or tested, or an intake setup that we have not seen or tested here on these new 2025 Z900s. So regardless of what setup you decide to put on your bike and you're looking for proper tuning, look no further than twowheeldynoworks.com. Our mail and ECU flashing service is $349.99 for these new bikes. We always flash and return ship ECUs the very same day that we receive them. And if you have any questions whatsoever about getting your new Z900 properly tuned and dialed in, please do not hesitate to email us at support@twowheeldynoworks.com. I personally answer any and all tech support questions we receive at the shop here every single day that we are open, and we are truly always happy to help.